CEO of Europe's largest advertising company, joins us. He is Martin Sorrell. Good morning to you, sir. Thanks so much for joining us. So tell me, what is your view of the global recovery? Is it sustainable? Is there any threat that it could be derailed?
Well, I'm not so sure that we're seeing that much of a recovery. We describe it as being less worse. We hear media owners celebrating the fact that instead of being minus 30 or 25 or minus 20 in terms of top-line sales, like-for-like sales, they're down 10 or 5%, and they're declaring victory. So I think, really, Lindsay, it depends on which part of the world you're looking at. I mean, you talked about us being European. We're not European, of course, we're worldwide. But if we look at Western Europe, things are still pretty tough. France, Germany, Italy, Spain, and the UK are tough. US is sort of in a middle band, certainly recovering less worse, more significantly less worse than Western Europe. And the BRICS and the next 11, Asia, Latin America, Africa, the Middle East, and Central Eastern Europe, are certainly much stronger. Having said that, places like Japan are having an equally tough time, maybe the worst time of any of the markets. Functionally, of course, online activities continue to grow, continue to expand, and we're seeing our consumer insight business becoming more important. So we haven't seen that recovery you're talking about quite yet. So whether there'll be a double dip or not, it's difficult to say. I think politicians will err on the side of leaving the stimulus in place too long rather than too short, and we'll see how this plays out this year. The State of the Union message was interesting in the sense that we didn't see rates rise, although there does seem to be a difference of opinion as to whether rates should be brought up in the near future. So I'm not quite as optimistic as you're suggesting.
Okay. Now, when we spoke to you late last year, you predicted a return to growth on a like-for-like basis for WPP in the second quarter of this year. Is that no longer going to be the case?
No, it's totally consistent with what I said. As you cycle through easier comparatives, life gets easier. We haven't finalized our budgets completely, but it looks like revenues for this year will be flat. And you remember we forecast -2 last year, and up until the end of September, we have to report our final quarter, we were about -8. Although we did see a significantly less worse position in November, not so much October, and we'll see finally what we announce in March for December. A flat 2010, when you cycle -11 in the second quarter, I mean, we should show an improvement. So I still see that the second quarter we'll see probably positive growth, but that's basically because we're cycling easier comparatives. Politicians always leap on easier comparatives or better comparatives as you cycle through the year, sequential GMP improvements, but you can't declare victory until you see consistent gains year to year, and that's when we'll see the recession being over. And my guess is that we'll see that as we cycle through 2010. Last year, first quarter, we were -6, then we were -11, then we were -8. So we were showing some improvement as we went into Q3, but we should be showing improvement against those weak comparatives as we come through 2010.
Now, this global crisis has precipitated a power shift towards the emerging markets, putting their economies like China on a more equal footing with the West. Are we now moving towards a China-centric world, as Stephen King of HSBC would suggest?
Well, emerging markets, I think, is the wrong phrase. I think it's faster-growing markets. They're growing faster than the Western European markets. We've seen that power shift that Stephen's referring to for a long time. It's a long-term shift. If you went back a couple of hundred years, you would have seen the same position, with China and India accounting for about 40% of worldwide GMP, and it's forecast to account, or those two countries are forecast to account for that in the next 20, 30 years. So the BRICS and next 11, as Goldman calls it, including Russia and Brazil, probably Latin America. It'll be the next decade will be the decade of Latin America, with the Olympic Games and the World Cup in Brazil and Rio in the coming years. So we're very much about a power shift, but the world is also about a power shift to the new media, and it's also about a better understanding, we think, of how our consumers, the consumers we interact with, are consuming media and consuming products, and indeed how our clients are managing their businesses.
Thanks.
Because in Europe, it's about cost containment, and worldwide, it's about expansion.
Okay, thanks so much, Sir Martin Sorrell.